how far out we can go with accuracy is how much data we have. In other words, every year I put the complete weather data for that year back into the program so that we increase the value and the accuracy of our forecasts year after year. So I have it done through now probably 2025, because it doesn't change unless I get new data to put in. Because the planets, we know where they're going to be, and we know where they've been, so I could hang up the weather maps now, and they'd be very, very similar to what they're supposed to be.
See, there's another phenomenon going on, not to derail the subject of what you're doing, but contextually, there's a whole thing going on with climate change. Is it getting warmer? Is it getting cooler? What's the truth about that? The politicalization of weather and climate. There's this whole push for it being a man-made problem. I can't imagine talking about long-range forecasting of weather without asking you if any of the factors that we've always looked at with climate being in cycles, if you have anything to say about that.
Well, as you know, there's another meteorologist that I deal very closely with, Joe DeLeo, Mr. Dr. Dew Point, he's well known as. And I think Joe and I have discussed this over many, many years. As you say, there have been so many cycles of, just the glaciers themselves, and also warm periods and cool periods. And so when I look at it, I say everything in life, everything that we know is cyclical. I don't know of much that isn't. People are born, they get old, they die. Trees grow up and they die. And so we go through these phases. And what we're seeing on the sun right now is that the sunspots are going into a very, very minimum cycle. And in addition to that, it's a long cycle, meaning from solar max to the next solar max, which is supposed to be 11 years or 10.7 years actually. Well, they turn out to be 12 and 13 years. The longer it stretches out, the colder the next 20 years will be. And the last cycle was extremely long. So I think global warming is not going to be a major factor. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. Because nobody knows if global warming, we've had it, of course we did, from the 80s and 90s, but was it man-made? I'm not sure of that. But I think now that we're into 2011, we're going to start to see cooler weather. This is globally, not in any one spot, but globally cooler. So I'm not one of those believers that we're going to see tremendous global warming and it's going to do us in. I'm on the other side of the picture where I think global cooling will take over. And I guess if we come back, Kim, 200 years from now, we'll see who was right.
But basically, the sun is one of the causal factors. Sunspot activity is directly correlated to cooling and warming. That's the point.
That's the point. And they now concluded, many scientists have concluded, that is the rotation of the planets, especially Jupiter, some of the heavy planets that actually form the sunspots and limit their sizes and so forth and so on. So again, the planet interferes or influences our climate.
When we say the big picture, are we talking about astrophysics?
You're talking astrophysics, yes, very much so.
So the whole thing is we have to really become aware of space weather and relationships of these planets in order to get the true picture of influences.
Well, that would be my theory, but somebody would say that's garbage. You know what I'm saying?
Well, how do people say sunspot activity, waxing or waning, is garbage?
Well,
they're watching that very closely.
They don't necessarily think that the planets are the cause of the sunspots.
How about influence?
Well, I certainly think that they influence them tremendously, but some people don't believe in that either. See, that's, way back when we used to think that the Earth was the center and the sun and all the stars revolved around the sun, when the first guy came along and said, no, it's the other way around. We revolve around them. Remember, they threw him in jail. Was that Aristotle?
I don't remember who it was.
I think it was Aristotle. They threw him in jail. And he spent the rest of his life under house arrest because he said the earth is not the center. It was heresy. The earth actually did not revolve, or the sun didn't revolve around the earth. It was just the reverse. And for his reward, he was thrown in jail. So a lot of scientists, we're trying to find out what's right and what's wrong, and so we're not 100% sure.
Have other meteorologists and climatologists been receptive in the quiet to you?
Oh, yes, but they're not allowed to express it. In fact, I was giving a talk at the American Meteorological Society many years ago while I was still teaching. And I was showing them the Lakeland weather program and how the kids really knew what they were doing and could forecast very accurately. And at the end, we always did a broadcast on the radio. The youngsters had to do a broadcast on the radio. That's how they were trained. And so I taped one of the broadcasts that a kid did. And it went along, and they were saying, oh, that's terrific. And at the end, the youngster said, and watch out, on February such and such, which was about 3 or 4 weeks from when he was doing this broadcast, he said, watch out for a big snowstorm in New York City. And they all died. Oh, you teach your kids, oh, that's terrible. And the chief of the Weather Bureau came to me and said, well, I'm going to watch that. And when that day came and New York City got snarled in a big snowstorm, he called me. He said, I don't know if it was luck or if it was skill, but that was pretty good. But that's, you know how all this started, Kim? I was watching television one night. This was back in the 1960s, and a fella from California, Harry Geist. Did you ever hear the name?
I didn't. Sorry, Harry.
Oh, no, Harry was a tremendous TV weather guy. And it was in October. And he said, and watch out, December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1966, there will be a huge snowstorm in New York City. And when the weather professionals came up to visit the kids, which they did often at the school, I said to them, what do you think of Harry Geist's forecast? They said, the man is out of his mind. He's out of his mind. I said, well, don't you give him a chance? I mean, how do you know he's wrong? You can't do that. I said, okay. Well, when December 24th came along, I received 17 inches of snow, along with thunder and lightning. It was a wild storm. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to Harry Geist saying, terrific call. I don't know how you did it, but it was great. And I told him about the Lakeland weather program. About 3 days later, I'm watching television, see him come on. He say, I got a letter from a Westchester, New York teacher. I want to read the letter. So he reads my letter on TV, CBS, and then he says, if that teacher, Mr. Witt, would like to come down and visit me, I would really welcome it. So I called up, of course, and went down to visit. And the first thing I walked in, he says, I know what you're going to ask me. I said, I'm going to ask you how you did it. And he said, I knew you were going to do that. He said, and because you're dealing with all these kids, I'm going to give you a couple of steps of how I did it, and then you can go on with your own research. And that's how I got started.
Wow. What synchronicity?
Yes?
What synchronicity? That's like synchronicity, divine providence,
Oh,
when it
yeah.
all comes together. Very interesting.
Unbelievable. And I've been able to teach these youngsters, and they're excited and so forth, and now they're in top spots around the country.
Have you ever been attacked?
No.
That's because you're a nice guy. How can you attack someone who gives to charity and creates products to help children? And a person who's been a teacher for almost all of his life and loves to learn and teach and has been so inspiring. I mean, seriously.
Well, Kim, it's interesting because I've never made a penny on long-range forecasting. I give it all away.